What is going on, everybody? So good to see you. I feel like it's been forever since I've been able to do one of these. I'm your host, Andrew Kahn. This is the Boomtown Pod Season 2, man. It's been a ton of fun. We've done a ton of things throughout the duration of Season 2 so far, and we're only getting started. We've only touched the surface of what we're going to be getting into, but of course, we can't do these great podcasts that I do without some amazing sponsors, including the Saskatchewan Podcast Network, Blue Collar Media Group, Stellar Gear, Sandman Boxing System, Connexus Credit Union, and Palestina's Women Fighting Championship, who I'm going to get into because I was part of the first event, and it was absolutely amazing. Clayton and crew crushed it. I mean, this event was the craziest thing I've ever witnessed, but I'm going to get into that once I do, of course, our weekly segment called The Week That Was. Now, that's sponsored by Sandman Boxing System out here in Saskatoon. They are great. They've had some really good luck as of late with Alliance Boxing. Shout out to Noah and Cole and all of the great fighters out there. Created. Shout out to you. You guys have done some amazing things in the city of Saskatoon and continue to develop an amazing program. So keep doing what you're doing. Now, again, the week that was is the segment. So let's dive into it. UFC Vegas 47, Strickland versus Hermansson was our main event. It felt like forever since I watched a UFC event, to be honest, because I've been just so damn busy. So it was good to see something of great caliber with Sean Strickland and Jack Hermansson. Now, Jack Hermansson, a great fighter. I had texted Felicia Spencer, and I was like, hey, who do I roll with in this fight? Because I couldn't, I didn't know. Sean Strickland is such a wild dude, and you never know what he's going to provide when it comes to a fight. So I was a little skeptical on taking him to begin with. I've seen so many sparring videos and the training videos and all this other stuff where he's kind of a whack job. And nonetheless, he pulled it out. It was a great victory. He picked apart Hermansson pretty much the get-go of this first round. I mean, realistically, he was out countering him, out punching him, out working him. He was being strategic. He didn't really move much, but he was so calculated in the way that Hermansson, the more that he came into it, got frustrated beyond belief. It looked like, Hermansson tried a couple of takedowns, tried to get inside of him, but every time you get inside, Strickland would hit him with like a 4-piece combo. It was really, really impressive from Strickland's camp. And it's crazy. Strickland had this amazing performance, and he still hasn't cracked the top 5, which I'm still kind of curious on, especially because Hermansson's at a top 10 competition level. So I guess we shall see what happens with Strickland, who they match him up with. I mean, kind of a weird scenario for Sean Strickland, and even he said it on his Twitter. He's like, I have no idea who I'm going to face next. I guess whoever, bring it on, right? So, I mean, that was our main event, and like I said, Sean Strickland getting the decision victory over Jack Hermansson. I'm sure Hermansson will be back. He was doing a lot of crazy things, Hermansson. He was really busy. His head movement was elite, and he was also really, really good. I will say this, at head movement on a guy with Strickland who's a really good puncher. So, I mean, shout out to Jack Hermansson. He's no slouch. I'm sure he's going to come back and be as strong as ever. Now, our co-main event featured a couple guys that you might not have heard of, and that's always for the better sometimes. Now, I have heard of these people. Nick Maximoff, a prodigy of the 209 camp. Of course, he's training with the Diaz brothers. He goes in with an undefeated record against Mr. Soriano. And I mean, I'll tell you right now, it was a good matchup. I thought Soriano did enough, maybe just from watching it, that I thought he did enough to maybe win the fight. I thought he was the busier of the two fighters for sure. But Nick Maximoff does throw punches and bunches. He's got that Diaz scrap pack mentality where it just move first, keep going forward. And that's how a lot of these guys have won their fights in you look at the scrap pack. You got Jake Shields, who was always a guy who put a lot of pressure on opponents and made them, try to get resourceful. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I mean, he was a champ, so I mean, obviously it did. And then you got like Gilbert Melendez, who, I got to watch in action against Jeremy Stevens. And I can tell you straight up, Gilbert Melendez just pushes forward the entire time, but that's that scrap pack mentality. So when I watched this fight, I was like, all right, I want to see what Nick Maximoff has when he has that kind of training. Nate Diaz was in the audience, so I'm sure that wasn't awesome bonus for him that one of his coaches was there and one of his like idols, I guess. I mean, hey, Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz are two of my favorite fighters of all fucking time. So it was really, really cool to watch that. And it seemed like the pressure was pretty much on the entire time from Nick Maximoff. But Soriano, like I said, when I watched the fight the first time, this is one of those fights that I had to watch 2 times. The first time I thought Soriano did enough. I thought he got the victory. And then I watched the second time. I thought, okay, usually in the UFC, if you're the busier fighter, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Maximoff did win the fight. I thought he tried enough, takedowns, and he did have him on the ground for a little bit. His punching was pretty precise. So, I'm okay with the decision now that I've watched it for the second time. But yeah, it was a great fight and a really cool fight card to like kind of kick back things, into the Apex in Vegas, UFC Vegas 47. It's just crazy to think that they've been doing this 47 times. I mean, like I was talking to Felicia during our meetup at PAWFC, and I just said, what was it like fighting in the Apex? And she just told me at that time, because there was no fans, it was really weird. So now that these guys have some like crowd there and there's some media members and stuff like that, I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of them being able to like continue to develop and get ready for those big crowds, because I mean, it's an inevitable return with big, massive crowds coming up. And a lot of these fighters will be on those cards, like guys like Nick Maximoff and Sean Strickland, and of course, Jack Hermanson. So, I mean, yeah, it was a good event to kick things off. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. We're going to recap that or preview that for you, sorry. And we're going to get into all that because I had a battle with COVID. And by the way, wasn't all that bad. Just going to put it out there. I was tired and I wanted to do a podcast, but I just couldn't. So here I am finally being able to recap PAWFC Women's Fighting Championship 1. What an amazing experience. That's all I can say. I mean, everything about the event was like everything I'd ever pictured it being. I mean, realistically, I got to meet some of the coolest fighters in the world. I mean, some of the greatest girls and women in MMA. It was crazy. It just, every time I turned my head, it was like a legend or an up and comer. And just times people were training in the hallway down from where I was sleeping. I was like, what is that banging? And I was like, oh shit, they're hitting pads already. It's like, I forget that there's a full camp going on. So it was really cool to experience that with the fighters as well. I'll give a ton of props to Clayton and crew. They did an absolutely amazing job. It's just not every day. When you grow up in Canada, especially, I know a lot of us have a lot of American viewers out there on here. But in Canada, guys like Nick Lewis, who are, former CFL All-Stars, are kicking off the pre-show. I was just like, this is the quality we're getting. This is crazy. But the fight card was even better. Oh my goodness. I mean, and I'm going to recap that for you. I got a couple of fights that I thought I'd clue in on. And give a couple of shout outs because I had Manuela Marcanetto on the podcast. She won her event in the very first fight against Stephanie Assis. So shout out Manuela. It was a great performance. She took her to basically just bullied her, put her on the fence, did what she had to do, and pulled off an incredibly great victory. And I thank you again to all the girls who jumped on the podcast weeks prior up leading to PAWFC 1. And of course, our main event was a title fight between Andy, the Cajun Win, and Laura Fontoura. And let me tell you, I was like, in that whole fight, I was really, really confused. And the only reason why is because Andy Win is a huge veteran, right? Now, I'm looking at the statistics, and she's been in a ton of scraps. Laura Fontoura, obviously a up-and-coming prodigy, crazy good. She was 6-0 going into the fight. So I was like, all right, well, as a pro, 6-0 is pretty damn respectable. So when I was watching it and obviously sitting on the sidelines doing commentary, and I've got to meet both of these girls beforehand, and Laura's like this like really cool, laid back girl, like you would never know, like she's this assassin who just arm bars everybody and gets everybody to tap. Then you got Andy, who was just like, I got to meet her and her husband, and they're amazing fucking people, like such good folks. And I really do hope that they're part of PAWFC too. When I was getting to talk to them, they were like very confident that Andy's striking was going to be better. But the one problem she had was trying to climatize to Calgary's altitude, which is hard for some of these fighters because they're going and training in harder parts of the States where they're not used to that altitude yet. And they come out to Calgary where it's above mountain height, and all of a sudden you're breathing that in, and it's getting harder and harder and harder for you to breathe. And at one point, I was just beyond impressed because Fontoura tried multiple times in the first round to do the takedown in the armbar, and Andy did a fantastic job defending it first and foremost, and then hitting her with pretty much unprotected shots, which I'm sure Fontoura is going to learn from. If I'm going to go for the armbar, I need to protect my face, which I mean, granted, it's harder to say or easier said than done, especially when you have a veteran on top of you like that. But Andy Wynn did a great job in that first round. I had Andy Wynn winning that first round, 10-9. And for sure, I just thought she was, even though she got taken down, she was a busier fighter on the top. She was hitting her with a lot of unopened punches, and I was very confused by the whole thing. And then we went into round 2, and that's when Andy, you could tell that altitude, like I brought up, started to hit her a little bit harder than before. And unfortunately, I don't want to say it cost her, but you could see that she had grown tired against Laura Fontoura. And Fontoura, I'm going to call her the arm snatcher, because this girl gets you in an arm bar, it is game over. 5 of her 7 victories now, all coming way of the arm bar. It's kind of Ronda Rousey-esque. Like, remember when Ronda would just take everybody's arm, put it in a submission hold with the arm bar, and then it was game over? That's pretty much what Laura Fontoura has been doing in her pro records so far. I'm really, really looking forward to watching her continue to develop and becoming an amazing fighter. This girl's only 21 years old and is 7-0 as a pro, and now is the recipient of the strawweight title. I'm just blown away by how amazing she was in that fight. She showed a ton of resiliency, especially because I said, like, Andy Wynn was, I would say, the better of the 2 strikers for sure. Even when it came into, like the introductions by Don Andrews, who got me fired up throughout the entire event, he was sitting there and he was introducing Laura, and Laura just kind of had her hands like this the whole time. And I was like, yeah, that's weird. And then, you had Andy, and she's just hyping up the crowd, and she was living off that energy. And I was just like, all right, well, I don't know how the hell this fight's going to go. And it kind of went the way I wanted or thought it was going to in the first round. And then Fontoura snapped that arm, and she got in there and got the submission victory. So congratulations to Mrs. Fontoura, who I'm sure will be part of PAWFC 2. And I cannot wait to watch her back inside the Palladium. And I'm really hoping she's back, especially Andy Wynn as well. She is a fantastic fighter. But yeah, moving on, we got Simone De Silva, who is a Golden Glove boxer. She was taking on a up-and-coming prospect with a 4-0 record in Dakota Ditcheva. Now, Dakota's go watch some highlights, folks. This girl's the real deal. It's only a matter of time before she is in what I would call the higher echelon ranks of the world. She's very marketable. She's just a badass. And for 3 rounds, we saw that. I mean, Simone De Silva, I will give a ton. And I feel like she deserves a ton of respect for stepping up and taking this fight. And the reason why is because she took this fight on 8 days' notice, which not always the easiest of things to do, especially when you have to, again, climatize to the altitude. You're coming from Brazil, and she had fought like 3 weeks prior in a boxing match. So, I mean, she is a genuine badass. And, I mean, Dakota was geared up. She was ready for a couple of opponents with, like I said earlier in the program, with COVID and some of the measurements that, other governments have put into place. It made it hard for Dakota to get an opponent. They nailed Simone De Silva. And Dakota, just vicious. Like, that's the only thing I can say to you the entire time. She was absolutely spectacular. Her striking was precise. Her knees. There was at one point she was hitting Simone De Silva, and this is why I said Simone's a badass. She was getting hit with knees like left, right, and center, and just straight to the head. And the sound, like, I even had headphones on, and the sound that I could hear from those knees from Dakota was insane. So props to them. I got to meet Dakota's team throughout the weekend too, and they are just spectacular people. And I think she's going to have a really, really good career. I really hope she comes back for number 2. I know that she said she wants a couple more fights to see if, maybe she's ready for that next step. She's very young. She's only 24, but she has been in the fight game since she was a kid. Her mom is a legend of the Muay Thai world. So obviously she's had a lot of influence and a lot of people impact her life. And she got to learn from obviously some of the best, and obviously Manchester Top Team has made her incredible. Like, she is a monster in there. So I think she's going to do very big things in the MMA world. And I was so glad, like everybody else that was in the crowd, that got to witness how amazing her performance was. And again, no knock on Simone De Silva, that was one of the bravest and toughest experiences I've ever seen. And it's so funny because after the event was done, and we're in the fighter lobby. Simone de Silva came up to us and saw the commentary table, and she kind of reached out with her phone, and she's Brazilian. So the Portuguese, obviously, and the English was a little hard to understand, but she goes, you watch. And she showed us her boxing fight from the previous 2 weeks ago, and she laid boots to her. So, I mean, it's just like, it's a crazy transition when you're going from boxing to MMA. And yeah, one of the toughest girls that I've ever seen, I'll watch, and she was great. Dakota, shout out to her. She's impressive. 5-0 now as a pro. And I think, like I said, I think she's just extremely marketable. PAWFC has a gold mine on their hands with her. And I really can't wait to watch her develop into this incredible fighter. And again, she's so young that she's going to continue to do that. And if you watch the card, of course, at PAWFC.com, and you rented it, you would have seen Maria Jukic versus Clara Risignulo. And I'm telling you right now, this is up there with bangers of the year in like even 2021 to now. That was insane. If you can do yourself a service, please go and rent this thing. I know it's still available to watch on hnlive.ca. Go watch this fight because I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. Maria Jukic and Clara went back and forth, and it was so calculated. It was a slugfest. The girls were precise with their takedowns. The precision on everything was there. It was one of the best fights that I have ever watched in person, on TV, in front of me, cage side. It was amazing. I mean, these girls went back and forth. They won fight of the night without a doubt. I mean, it totally made sense. Maria obviously picking up the victory over Clara, who's now 3-3. Maria moving up to 2-0 as a pro. One of those things that I said to Clayton when we were all hanging out, I said, man, you got a star on your hands with Maria. I mean, even Clara, she was so good. So many times that Maria would take her down, she would automatically get back up, crawl up the cage, and she was okay. She got rocked a couple times. Maria's got some strength in those hands. She just got bombs. She's a very well-rounded fighter. I literally think the ceiling is through the roof with Maria if she continues to do what she was doing. And again, this is fight of the night all day long. Both girls taking home $2,500, which hell yeah, who's going to complain about that? And the entire crowd, like if you guys were there and you got to listen or you watch live, you could hear the crowd absolutely going crazy the entire time for how amazing those two fighters were. So shout out to both of them, Maria and Clara, for one hell of a fight. Again, do yourself a favor, hnlive.ca, go rent it if you haven't yet, or even PAWFC.com. Click on the buy now link. If you missed it, you don't want to miss the entire fight card. It was that good. So yeah, no, great fight, ladies, and an amazing card top to bottom. Everybody here and everybody deserves a ton of credit on that. But then there was, like I said, it was kind of like surreal because for a couple of seconds, I mean, I'm just going to dive into this. Cris Cyborg, for me growing up, I'm 30. She's been in the MMA game for 20 plus years. She's won the strap in every single division. She's what I call the Grand Slam champion, right? Like, I mean, she's won it every single place she's gone to, including Bellator, where she's at now. And when I met her, I couldn't believe how humble she was, or just how nice her and her management team was. Because again, you hear about meeting your idols, and she is one, and it was totally cool to meet her. It's just one of those things where you don't understand. You're like kind of complex with yourself. You're like, am I really talking to Cris Cyborg? And is she just cool with everything? Like, she literally went out of her way. All these girls, right? A lot of the girls came from Brazil. So having that Portuguese conversations back and forth with a living legend. There's that one time where Laura Fontoura was doing the interview with Cyborg, and Cyborg was almost brought to tears because she could see that passion in such a young fighter, because it reminded her of her. And I mean, Cyborg is just the coolest human being. Say what you will about her. She is, without a doubt, one of the most humble and most extremely cool people that I think I'll ever meet. And I am glad to have met. The other one was Felicia Spencer, who sat ringside between me and Ryan Ballantyne. And Felicia, obviously, an absolute legend of the sport in her own. I mean, she, retired now, but was a #1 contender who fought the likes of Amanda Nunes, who fought Chris Cyborg. So, I mean, realistically, it was kind of cool to have all these people in the same room and everybody was getting along. I mean, you know how the fight game can be. You say some stuff leading up to fight week, and who knows, people could be friends and frenemies, right? So, but no, Felicia was awesome. I mean, she had so much insightful advice, you know, and talking to her, you know, I kind of was curious as to why she called it a retirement when she did. And she was pretty honest. Like, we went for supper and she straight up said, like, I'm at the point in my career, I just think I don't need to be taking unnecessary, you know, punishments or hitting or punches or anything like that. I just don't. And I got a career that I want to focus on after, and she's been really successful with what she's been doing. Obviously, she was ringside with us at PAWFC, and a weekend later, she's at Eagle FC. So, I mean, she's working with Chael Sonnen and the likes of them too. So, I mean, very valuable experience for her, and she continues to grow into a commentator, which is, you know, I think she's going to do a really, really, really good job with that. But again, Clayton and the entire team at PAWFC made this event one of the coolest experiences that I think I'm ever going to be a part of. And from what I've heard, all extensive talks and all the back and forth, it seems like there will be a second card very soon. I don't know the specifics of when and where, but I can tell you Clayton and team are working very hard on bringing a number 2 to our, of course, great nation here in Canada. Now, again, all these girls, the one thing I really took away from it, the last note I'll leave on this is that the girls, just talking to them, obviously I had them leading up to the fight and having them on the podcast, but just talking to them in person, it just seemed with the pandemic and everything that was going on, they were so grateful for the opportunity to just prove themselves, that they had a place in the Palladium that they could actually be who they are, because for so long, all these girls have been, you know, there's been restrictions that and restrictions this, and it gets harder and harder and harder for these girls to, you know, have fights going. And it's, you know, at this point now where she is, you know, these girls are absolutely excited that they've had this shot and this chance to prove to themselves that we are the best in the world and we will continue to be the best in the world, and we have a platform to do so. And women's MMA, I've been, again, a fan of it from the forefront. I am pushing it to all the extremes and levels. I wanted to succeed, and I was so happy to see such an amazing card start to finish. And again, even behind the scenes, meeting these people, it's just absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait for PAWFC 2. Now, with that being said, we're going to go into our next segment. This is called The Future. It's sponsored by Connexus Credit Union and, of course, the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. Now, when I talk about the future, we're talking about UFC 271 that is going to be taking place this weekend. Oh, boy. February 12th, we're going to see a hell of a card. Izzy versus Whittaker 2, middleweight title fight. That sells itself. Robert Whittaker, one of the biggest badasses in the history of the game. You name it, he's done, including being a former middleweight champ. The only thing he hasn't done is beaten Israel Adesanya. But that seems like everybody has lost Israel Adesanya. So, I mean, this is a crazy, intriguing matchup. Their styles are just so different. I mean, Izzy's this really, really methodical, like kind of, I would like, it's crazy, but like Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyan hits him and he just does something incredible. And he's an absolutely amazing fighter. And obviously he's a champ for a damn reason. He moved up to the light heavyweight area of the world. He obviously lost. Jan beat him. But I mean, realistically, this matchup is fireworks. So that's taking place this weekend. Izzy is obviously, if you're into betting, he is the clear favorite right now. But I'm not sleeping on Robert Whittaker. I think Whittaker in that first matchup learned a lot against Israel Adesanya. Like he said, he was during the media so far, he said, I was pissed off. I had a bad weight cut. I wasn't having a lot of fun. And there was a lot of stuff going on in my personal life behind the scenes that I just really couldn't get into fighting. And of course, at that time, Izzy hit him with the head kick and boom, there it was. You know, it was hard to watch. It was hard to see because I'm a big Robert Whittaker fan. Big Robert Whittaker fan. And of course, yes, Ernest commenting, BCMG Hype. That's right, Blue Collar Media Group in the house. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it, Ernest, so much here. And yeah, shout out to Blue Collar Media Group, the motherboard. They do everything for me. So, hey, what's up? Anyways, yeah, no, Izzy and Whittaker, absolutely an incredible matchup. I'm really looking forward to this one in a massive, massive way. Again, Izzy, hands down, biggest favorite. And then, of course, Whittaker. I just, this is a hard one because if I'm going for picks and I'm going head over heart or heart over head, I guess my logical sense is I'm going to stay safe. I'm going to make a couple bucks on Izzy, but I like the undercard and I like the underdog on Robert Whittaker. So I'm going to roll with Robert Whittaker in this fight. I think he learned a lot about who he was in that previous fight, and he is going to go in there and I think be a lot more methodical, a lot more calculated, and a lot more advanced than he has been in the past. That leads us to our co-main event of the evening, which of course involves some heavyweights, some brothers in this one. Derrick Lewis, the Black Beast. He's just an insane fighter, taking on Tuivasa. I'm sure somewhere Sean Shelby was completely smiling when he got this matchup announced, and I'm sure Tua loved it too. These guys are both sluggers. This is going to be a brawl. One's a kickboxer, one's an all-out brawler. I don't even think Tua has a style. Tuivasa's just out there. He just throws. He's been coming. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He's knocking fucking everybody out. Derrick Lewis, as we know, a former #1 contender who's been there, done that, seen it in the UFC. And his run in the last 3 years, can't take it away from him. His balls were hot, and he's still dropping people. So, I mean, it's incredible. If you haven't seen the reference, please go on YouTube. Watch up Derrick Lewis's best post-fight interview of all time. My balls was hot. # hell yeah, brother. But, yeah, Tai Tuivasa, going to be an incredible matchup. This one I'm a little split on as well because Derrick Lewis is ferocious. His hands are absolutely lightning quick, and his feet, like I said, as a kickboxer, he's pretty damn good that way too. I would also say that Tuivasa, like I said, 3-fight win streak for the kid. I mean, this is a big break-it fight for him. If he wins this fight, I put him in the top 3. He's probably in that contention because Derrick Lewis has been there and done that. So I'm really excited about this matchup. A strong, strong heavyweight matchup. If Ty wins, we all know he's going to fucking crack a buddy and grab a shoe. And which I've done a couple of them. They're fucking gross. I don't know how he does it every time. And if you ever watch his Instagrams or any of his feeds, he does one on there too. So it's pretty banana land. But it's going to be a great matchup. Tune in this weekend. UFC 271 Lewis versus Tuivasa is your co-main event of the evening, which I don't think it's going to make it past. I'm going second round finish by 2. I think Tuivasa is going to pull this off. I just think all the momentum's been on his side lately. He's got a knockout win over Greg Hardy, who shut him up right away. I mean, everybody counted him out in that one. So, I mean, Tuivasa is my pick. I'm rolling with him. I mean, I think he's the underdog in this as well. So, again, I'm rolling with plus money apparently this weekend, so I will take it. And then, of course, one of the most intriguing matchups when it comes to the middleweight title contention as well is going to be the third fight of the night, which is going to be Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson. Saw the post or the pre-fight so far. Derek Brunson's blonde. Doesn't lose when he's blonde. Just saying, I don't know what the fuck the blonde Derek Brunson is, but he's unworldly. But he's been really, really good. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to this matchup. Jared Cannonier is a monster. When we did our BCMG live in Texas, he was the main event, and man, he was just so good. Thanks for everybody again who tuned into that live stream. That was absolutely amazing. But this fight has contention written all over it. I mean, Brunson has lost to Izzy recently. Jared, I think, is the intriguing matchup for Izzy, and Izzy's been asking for it for a while. So there's kind of like this give and take with those two guys. Cannonier has been asking for this fight, and Izzy has kind of wanted the fight, but Whittaker was the one to make. So like I said, the middleweight division in the top 5 right now is a little congested. So I think this will do a lot of separation and a lot of freedom from what they're going to be trying to do in the middleweight division. But I really, really look forward to this matchup. It's an intriguing matchup. Jared Cannonier is a very intelligent striker. He's very precise on his takedown defense as well. His takedown ability overall is really good too. But Derek Brunson's a force, man. When he comes in there and he shoots at you, not a lot of guys are successful with his takedowns. And he's a big middleweight. So he sits there and he gets on top of you, and it's just elbows and sometimes, like, obviously submission victories for him in his career as well. So, I mean, this is a very intriguing matchup. I think this is kind of one of those split money ones if you're going to be betting this weekend. I am going to roll with Jared Cannonier. I think he's going to do just enough to beat Derrick Brunson. But again, Derrick Brunson dyed his hair back to blonde, so blonde Derrick Brunson doesn't lose. I don't fucking know anymore. The UFC's wild, man. You make up all these matchups and you really, really don't know because they're so interesting and intriguing and strong. I mean, this is a very good matchup, like I said, in the middleweight division. So I'm pretty pumped about this one. But yeah, nonetheless, I just wanted to kind of jump on here and just do a quick podcast, nice little half hour, 40-minute one, and just give a ton of shout outs again to Palestina Women's Fighting Championship. That was an incredible card. I was so glad to be part of it. Like I said, getting to meet some of my idols, including Sarah Kaufman as well, who I forgot to mention how, I don't know, but Sarah Kaufman was just amazing as well. I got to, talk to her behind the scenes, and she's a very humble and very intelligent woman, and she's watching a lot of Olympics. Go Canada, go. The men's hockey team just won today, beating Team Germany. So, I mean, I know it's not the NHL, but hey, at least we have the Olympics, and there's some recognizable names that are on the men's Olympic squad, including guys like Eric Stahl, who got appointed today. So, guys but nonetheless, UFC 271 this weekend. Make sure you guys are checking it out. Make sure, of course, that you go to BetUS. Gonna fill you in a little secret. Got some stuff coming up with them. So, make sure that you're tuned in with them and check out what the listings are. I didn't post them for a strategic reason because I'm going to be posting them tomorrow when I know what the actual cards locked in are after weight cuts and everything are done. Because you never know if a fight gets scrapped and you put money on it, and then I look like an idiot for telling you to bet on it. So nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find us, of course, on Facebook at the Boomtown Pod where you are watching it. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, also on SASPodNetwork.com and BlueCollarMG.com. You can also check out all of our podcasts and all of our videos at PAWFC.com as we are officially the media host for them. So with that being said, you guys have a fantastic rest of your Thursday night. Tune into UFC 271 this weekend, and we will catch you in 2 weeks' time.